We will begin the hearing of the Senate Committee on Elections and Constitutional Amendments. Begin by taking roll, establishing quorum. Torres, here.
Anderson?
Here.
Hancock?
Here.
Jackson?
Here.
Padilla?
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. First item on the agenda is SCA 17. Senator Steinberg. Mr. Pro Tem.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the committee. This bill provides that a Senate or Assembly member can be suspended by a majority of the House. The measure also permits the salary and benefits of the suspended member to be forfeited during the period of suspension. I won't belabor, I'll be happy to answer any questions, but will not seek to belabor the unfortunate genesis of this bill. But under current law, the Senate and Assembly may suspend the authority of its respective members to exercise the privileges of the office for a fixed, limited period of time that is reasonably necessary to preserve the honor, the dignity, and the efficiency of the House. However, that power is limited in that the body does not have the power to suspend its members without pay. According to our Legislative Counsel, who we do rely on for expert legal analysis, and in an opinion referenced in the committee analysis itself that has been widely distributed not only to members but to the public and the press as well, the Leg Council has been very clear that the legislature may not suspend the salary or benefits of a member for the duration of the suspension. Why? Because the Constitution vests the California Citizens Compensation Commission with the power to adjust the salary and benefits of members of the legislature. In addition, the Constitution provides that travel and living expenses for members must be prescribed by a statute passed by 2/3 of the membership of each House. Finally, the Constitution also provides that the salaries of elected state officers may not be reduced during their term of office. When exercising its inherent and expressed authority to impose a range of sanctions, each House of the legislature should be empowered to suspend its members without pay, should the circumstances warrant such action. That's what this measure, this constitutional amendment, seeks to do, and I would urge an aye vote.
Thank you. Do you have witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Seeing none. Questions from the members? Mr. Anderson?
So in the Ledge opinion, it says that it would be for a fixed, limited period of time. What is a fixed, limited period of time? When does it constitute that it's no longer a limited period of time? At the end of their term, or at what point?
I think that's not clear in the Constitution, and it's up to the legislature, I think, to exercise its discretion to determine on a case-by-case basis what that appropriate time for a suspension is. And that's what we've done this year. We've called the suspensions indefinite. We know 2 of the members end their terms and their term limits at the end of November. The 3rd does not. So
my concern is during this time they would not be able to perform their duties on the floor of the Senate. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So conceivably they could be out for a year or 2, perhaps 3 years. During that time frame, who would represent their constituents?
I think you make a fair point, Senator Anderson. And again, the legislature would maintain its plenary authority to expel a member. In appropriate cases, to suspend a member without pay, either indefinitely or for a fixed period of time. None of this changes the discretion of the legislature to expel a member with 2/3 of the membership approving.
Well, as the bill is currently written, it says 50% plus one, simple majority. It doesn't say 2/3. Or do you
That's
plan
to suspend.
Right.
That's
So
to
do you
suspend.
plan to amend that to the 2/3, or do you expect to keep it at a simple majority?
I don't know. I'm open to that conversation with you, with the Republican leadership. I want to consider that and engage in further conversation about whether 2/3 or majority is the appropriate threshold.
I have two major concerns. The first one, of course, is the fact that I believe this shouldn't be about senators. It should be about our constituents and the government that they pay for. And they pay to have a senator or an assembly person to represent them. They don't pay for us to be sending them home without representation. So I'm deeply concerned by that. It badgers me. The second issue is that we have seen a history of both speakers and pro tems using bullying
Is this a
tactics.
statement or is this a question? We're going to limit our conversations to questions. So if you have a question for the pro tem, you may go ahead.
Madam Chair, this is a very serious issue. It's the
I
only thing on
understand
the
that.
docket. I would ask that you give it the appropriate amount of time. Now, I have sat through many committee hearings in the
Once
past,
again,
and people have been
Senator
able to ask the
Anderson,
questions.
is this a question
Do you plan to
or a
suspend me?
debate? Of course not.
All right, well, that's what I'm getting to. So we have had a history over the years of pro tems and speakers using bullying tactics. For example, we had a legislator lose her office because she didn't vote for a budget and was moved to the LOB. We've had 3 members be locked out of their office for a number of days. We've had a member who
None
lost.
of this you're attributing to me, I assume.
I didn't say your name.
Well, what you imply,
But-
I mean, you
but the
ought to
pro
be
tem-
clear in what you're saying.
But the pro tem and the speaker, the positions, have done these things in the past. So the idea that nefarious things haven't occurred, and now with the simple majority, or with houses they have 2/3, I'm concerned, what are the protections from undue pressure being added to legislators so that they're getting forced to make a specific vote, or they're being, instead of censured for breaking Senate rules, now it's an excuse to suspend them because perhaps it's a minority view that the pro tem doesn't want to hear on the Senate floor.
Senator Anderson, I think you're raising fair points, but your argument, respectfully, you're turning your own argument on your head, because the motivation for this measure, of course, is to make it easier for either the Senate or the Assembly to suspend a member without pay, where we currently don't have that authority. And I'm saying that we ought to make it available in the appropriate circumstances with the majority vote, make it a little bit easier to suspend a member without pay, where we can't do it now. You're suggesting 2/3 because you think that might be abused. I would only suggest to you that you ought to decide what's more important to you: the ability to remove the body of a member without pay who may have violated the law or the Senate rules, or your worry about excessive partisanship. Because I'm not sure I can reconcile both concerns here. So please make up your mind, and I would be happy to try to work with you to try to meet your objective and the objective of your colleagues.
Well, I can't speak for my colleagues, but I can speak for myself. I believe this gives undue influence over other members, and I believe that using a crisis to gain additional power that's not been provided by the Constitution is the wrong way to go.
Okay.
In the Constitution, we have the ability to expel. And the reason why it's expel and not suspend is because I believe that they were concerned about constituents having representation and having an unset time. And the other issue is putting undue pressure. We know that pro tems and speakers in the past have used all sorts of antics to get votes that they want, whether it's locking down the House, whether it's removing a member from
I
office.
have done that, by the way.
Look,
Locked down the House. Proudly. Got us through the 2009 budget crisis and saved the state, but, sometimes you have to use extraordinary means to accomplish the people's business. I'm
taking this issue seriously. These are serious concerns,
Yeah.
and I'm not passing judgment on you personally.
Oh, I don't-
I'm saying the office will have undue power over members. And the idea that we're now changing things to accommodate what the House has already done without authority, I mean, I get it. But that's not my point. My point is, how do we move forward in a thoughtful manner
Fair enough.
that protects the people? Because that's who I care about most. I don't care about who my buddies are. I don't care about any of the other stuff. In all three of those members, we're friends, and I'm disappointed in the way things turned out. But at the end of the day, constituents should have representation.
I think that we all see eye to eye on that.
Yeah,
We're going to move on.
Can I just say, Senator Anderson, your specific concern about a 2/3 versus majority, I take that. I take that constructively, and like I said, I want to think about it and talk to Senator Huff and your leadership, and make an appropriate decision. Thank you.
Senator Jackson.
Yes, thank you. I don't want to get into a partisan battle here. I want to thank you for bringing this issue. I think the people of California share the very concern that you've articulated here. Is we have people who have been subject to criminal indictment. We do still rule, hopefully, by law in this state. They're entitled to their due process, but at the same time, the public is entitled not to have to pay for them while they're going through that procedure. And I think that we have to respect the rule of law in this state. I think we have to honor the way our system of government is set up, and I also think the taxpayer shouldn't have to pay for someone who is going through that scrutiny. And on that basis, I think that this bill is accurately targeted to address that issue. Coulda, woulda, shoulda, maybe, possible, likely, whatever. I don't want to engage in those discussions at this point in time. They kind of, to me, get into an agenda. Right now we're talking about doing the people's business, and I think doing the people's business is suspending these people at the very least without pay. The notion that folks can get paid for doing nothing because they're under a criminal indictment, I think runs contrary to all of our sense of fairness and justice, and that's why I wanted to speak up, because I don't want to go into what somebody might do. You might lose your office. They might take away your wastebaskets. That isn't what this is about. What this is about is making sure that when people are going through this kind of scrutiny, they don't get paid while they're doing it. And I think that that's appropriate. I think that that's what this bill does. And on that basis, I'm going to move the bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Hancock.
Thank you. I was actually going to move the bill, too. I think it's very narrowly targeted to deal with only one issue, the issue of pay in this situation, and that's appropriate. There may be other things we need to look at, and I also would be happy to work with Senator Anderson. I think there are many, many things we need to look at, and we'll be doing that one step at a time. This is a good beginning. Thank the Pro Tem for bringing it forward.
Senator Padilla.
So, thank you. You might have had three motions here,
Yes.
or possibly even a fourth with Senator Anderson. But just to speak in favor of favor of the measure as well, and in part offer my counter thoughts to Senator Anderson's question or concern. I mean, to me, this makes sense. Fundamentally, in the Constitution, the Senate does have the authority to judge the qualifications and elections of its members. Right, it's a formal process that happens every 2 years after an election, where members are seated into their positions. Similarly, the Senate has the authority to discipline or sanction members in certain ways. And so, in the last several months, there's been this debate or discussion. Do you expel? Can you suspend? Or calling upon a member to resign. That's not an action of the legislature, but you can encourage members in certain situations to elect that option as well. And I'm hearing it from constituents and beyond as well. Why did you only suspend with pay? Well, as Senator Steinberg has brought to light, the Constitution doesn't afford the House to suspend without pay. That's a question we'll put before the voters. But to Senator Anderson's point about the vote threshold, I mean, to me, it seems If it's a majority vote to suspend, it's a majority vote to discipline or in any way, shape, or form, let that recommendation or package of sanctions come as a package before the floor. And so if the threshold is a majority, the threshold is a majority. If it's a 2/3, it's a 2/3. Current law is it's a majority to suspend. The measure before us only affords another option of suspension without pay versus suspension with pay. And I'll remind us all, it's not a mandate that every suspension be without pay. It only affords the Senate an option.
That's right.
And in so doing, provides yet another option in a basket of options or a spectrum, because ultimately the sanctions, interim or permanent, ought to reflect the reason for the suspension. When we say let the punishment fit the crime, there's some more egregious than others, and so some punishments ought to be more egregious than others, and this affords the Senate an additional option.
Thank you, Senator Padilla, and I would agree. I think that there has been a lot of conversations in both of our caucuses about the issue of pay or no pay. Obviously, in the public sector, as you are very well aware, there are peace officers and there's teachers and folks that are public servants, such as ourselves, that are suspended and sometimes indefinitely until criminal cases are finalized with pay. Our conversations, at least in the Democratic caucus, have been very clear that we are above that, and we wanted to have an opportunity to do something different because we felt that the taxpayers deserved something different. In this case, the pro tem came up with a solution to give us the ability to have another option with or without pay. How long should that suspension be for? I think that there will be a lot of discussion should this case arise again, or should we have to. And hopefully we don't ever have to be in this position again, but should we will have options, pay or without pay, and for how long. And that will depend on the action of the member. So thank you for making the recommendation. It is due pass to Appropriations Committee.
I have just a quick comment.
Okay.
I get why it's good for senators. What I don't get is why this is good for constituents who don't have representation.
Well,
allowing this power grab will lead to a Lord of the Flies on the Senate floor. Might doesn't always make right. I won't be able to support this bill today. Thank you.
It's always questionable whether to take the bait, and I'll try not to. But I just.
And this will be your closing statement.
This is the closing statement here. There is another side to, just because one speaks like they're righteous doesn't make them righteous. Because at least in 2 of the 3 occasions that we're dealing with here in the Senate, you have 2 people who have been charged with very serious allegations of corruption, but they haven't had their day in court. They haven't been tried. So I suppose that Senator Anderson's remedy would be to, I don't know. Under the current law is to expel them and or to do what we have done, which is to prohibit them from exercising any of the privileges of being a senator. And I might add, to the detriment of the majority parties, majority and supermajority. Man, that's partisan. And so, okay, we all have a mic, and we all represent our people, and we all are constituents, and we all have strong opinions. And some of us actually have the responsibility of leading and making hard decisions, and I obviously take that seriously. The other thing I would say with regard to the 2/3 and the majority, I actually probably lean more towards Senator Anderson's point of view, actually, on the 2/3 in the end, but I want to consider it, as I said. But let's not forget the abuses. You want to talk about abuses? The abuses of the 2/3 supermajority when it was in existence for many aspects of how the Senate and the Assembly governed itself. How many late summer budgets do we need to talk about that were leveraged by the minority party for some tax break or some other goodie instead of doing the people's business? I mean, I could go on and on. So you want to talk about abuse? Well, what if somebody merits a suspension, but they happen to be a member of the minority party, and you can't get the 2/3 because they want to protect them? I mean, so it goes both ways. So no one has the premium here on righteous indignation or the correct opinion. I think in the end you're probably right on the 2/3 on balance. But I would like to pass the bill as is and continue to have conversations with the members and the leadership, and I'd urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Okay, once again, the motion is to be adopted and refer to Senate appropriations. Madam Secretary?
Torres?
Aye.
Torres, aye. Anderson?
No.
Anderson, no. Hancock?
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Jackson?
Aye.
Jackson, aye. Padilla? Padilla, aye.
4-1, your bill is out, and that completes the business of this committee. We are adjourned. Thank you.